Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Tempe Creek, where we talk and work on our homesteading, vineyard, and winery operation. If you're into that type of content, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you can learn about how much things cost and how to do things on either of these operations. And today we're answering the question, how much does it cost to start a winery? Now, if you have millions of dollars, this is probably not going to be the video for you. I'm talking about mom and pop, do-it-yourself sort of a winery. For those of you who have a couple acres and you just want to monetize that or make the most value out of that, this video is for you. All right, so let's talk about some of our costs. We're going to start with licensing. When dealing with alcohol, you have to go through all three levels of government: your federal, your state, and even your local government. And so we're going to go ahead and talk about what it takes to license all the way through that. All right, at the federal level, this is where cost gets a little murky right off the bat, and that's because it's actually free to apply for your permit at the federal level. However, the federal permit is kind of long and it's very wordy. So what a lot of people end up doing is they hire a lawyer for, I've heard for about $5,000. It tends to be the average of what I hear, but I've heard up to like $10,000 for a lawyer to actually do the application for them. But you still have to do the majority of the work yourself, because you still have to get all the material, all the information for the lawyer. And so I personally would not recommend that. But if you just want to make sure someone does it right, do that. But a better option, in my opinion, is to do it yourself, send it in. They will send back any corrections you need to do. And that process might go over a couple of times. So if you know you're gonna do this, you know you're gonna open up a winery, what I would suggest is start the application process a year in advance of your opening date, or maybe even earlier. It doesn't hurt to have your federal permit earlier before you start actually opening up for the public. I'm actually working on some content right now for you guys to help you through that process. Whenever the content's ready, I'm gonna put a link in the description below for you guys. I'll also post a video to let you guys know that this content is there. It's gonna help you guide you through the entire process, and so you don't have to pay that $5,000 lawyer fee for them to do it. You can basically do it on your own with a little guidance. So the price for that is either zero, or we'll just take the average, which is $5,000. I recommend going with the zero. Next, the state level. The state permit basically rehashes everything, so you just take your answers from your federal permit and then just input them into your state permit. But how much does it cost? So the cost for a state permit in Texas, where we're at, is $1,800 for every 2 years. So basically it comes down to $900 a year. Now this next part is optional, is adding a festival permit and a winery transport permit. I recommend getting both of those, but to start off with, you don't have to do that because you're probably just gonna go ahead and start getting the ball rolling. I recommend in about 6 months to a year after you do that, really 6 months, going and applying for those permits so that you can actually transport your wine and also be able to go to festivals and things like that. And then your local government is also going to want a piece of the pie. Ours charges us $100 every time we renew our state permit, and so we'll add that to the cost. So it's $1,800 to start, and then an additional $100 for our local permit. And so if you add up all our total was $1,900. If you do a more typical getting a lawyer your federal permit and your local permit, that gives you $6,900 just to get the licensing approval. Some pitfalls that might actually happen, which actually happened to us, which is why I know, and I'll add it to our cost, is when we went to the local level, they wouldn't actually sign our permit to actually be able to start producing wine and selling it on premises. The county clerk wouldn't do it, and so even though it was legal, she still wouldn't do it. So we had to hire a lawyer to go out and actually write a letter to the DA saying that they must sign the letter or else we're taking it to court. Once that letter went out, everything was fine. We got our signature and we were able to open. But that was only after a lot of heartache and an additional $2,500. So we paid a lawyer $2,500 to help us open up our vineyard and winery. So that puts our cost at $4,400 to open up. Next, let's move on to equipment. We're not gonna focus on everything like bottles, corks, yeast, all that other stuff. We're not focusing on that because those consumables basically go up as you're selling more wine. And it also depends on your supply chain, but we will be coming out with videos in the future on those things. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Learn more about those things when those videos come out. What we're gonna really focus on are like the big ticket items, which mainly is gonna be your tank and your pump. We're also not talking about building costs, infrastructure costs, because that's gonna be different for everyone. All right, so we'll talk about the tanks we got, and then I'll give you a recommendation of what you guys should do just to start off with so that you know what you're getting yourself into. So this tank, we started with this tank right here. It's $500. We got it on like More Wine actually, which actually has been a beast. We use it all the time. It's 132 gallons or 500 liters, but we ended up spending $500 on this tank. We'll add that to our total. Next, we bought this tank, which is a 55-gallon variable tank, which ended up running us about $600. And this has been really good too, because the variable tanks actually, you're able to store wine a little bit easier because the top kind of just sits on top of your wine. And then we got this 20-gallon tank as well for about $100. It was on sale. And the reason I got it is basically just for more experimental batches. And then next we bought these tanks off of a brewery actually, and right now you can see it's actually full. We're fermenting some cab in it, but these were $100 a pop, and these are 80-gallon tanks, actually 85, but we fill them up to about 75, 80 gallons. And so we'll add in that cost as well. Guys, give your recommendations in the comments below for tanks, which ones you use or which ones you find a good value out of. Also, I'll add a link for the tanks that I mentioned here, or at least the 500-liter one, which I think has a lot of value, in the description below. This is our pump that we're actually using. It's like called a Blickman Riptide, and that's the pump we're using to pump and rack and transfer it from tank to tank. If we add up all our tanks, it's about $1,500 for the tanks, and then our pump was $200. So that gives us a total of $6,100 in tanks, of our pump, and our licensing fee to get to a point where we could open up and start making wine. And the last piece of equipment, which we don't have, is a press. And so currently we don't have a press because they are crazy expensive. And so what I suggest doing instead of buying your own press is either borrowing if you're in tight with somebody else that has one, or you could always rent one. And I'm sure people would not mind making a little bit of money off for their press because there's only used a couple times a year, and so if you're paying a little bit extra, they're making more money off that. Guys, I hope this was helpful, and I hope I put you on the path of actually trying to start your own winery business. Even if you have zero experience, I will get you there. Make sure you subscribe to be able to make your homestead, vineyard, or winery operation more profitable.